Well, it was a long time coming. After nearly half a year of dunking on BDSP every now and then, it's finally time to explain how I feel about this game. This is how I learned to love Inbred Diamond and Silly Pearl, despite still hating them with a burning passion. For this special video, we're gonna do things a little differently. Instead of my normal format where I just script the videos and figure out the chapter layout later, today I'll be formatting this video with intended chapters, starting with... First, let's set the scene of how BDSP came into our view. It was Pokemon 25, aka Pokemon Day 2021. The Pokemon Presents we got had been pretty tame for 10 minutes. We got stuff about the TCG and smartphone apps, all the stuff we were expecting. Then, at 10 minutes 49 seconds, the games we had been waiting for since 2014 was announced. The long-awaited Diamond and Pearl remakes. BDSP will be produced by rEmAKe, the people behind Pokemon Home. These games were also announced alongside Legends Arceus, a new entry that would seemingly take the series in a new direction. But honestly, I did not care about that. Diamond and Pearl remakes! I freaking love Sinnoh. I was so excited to get the definitive Sinnoh experience. I was so hyped. And other people's reactions were...
What the fuck?
God, that would be so base. What the f is that? No! Why does it look like that? What is this?
Is it Let's Go? Oh, it's not. Wait, is it?
What am I looking at? What is these graphics?
Wait, how does it look worse than on the DS? I don't understand.
I have more questions than answers, though.
Well, they were mixed to be sure. In particular, the art style seemed to be a real shock. In the past, whenever we've gotten a Pokemon remake, they would always use the same engine as the current generation. Logic would dictate that BDSP would have used Sword and Shield's engine, but instead we got a more chibi art style. Insert Zelda comparison that wasn't helped by Legends Arceus. People seem to not know what to feel about this look. On one hand, it did make it look more like the originals, but on the other hand, certain animations just did not look good. They luckily got better when the actual games came out, but there would be another reason for fans to worry. And it wasn't rEmAKe's lack of experience making fully fledged games. People would later find out that BDSP would be a faithful remake, being one-to-one with the original Diamond and Pearl, which to many seemed like a huge problem. Reason being that Diamond and Pearl are complete abominations. Now, I'll be upfront that I never played the original Diamond and Pearl, but considering people only bring them up to dunk on them, talk about how great Platinum is in comparison, and the quality of their faithful remakes, it's safe to say that whenever anyone said they wanted DP remakes, they really meant they wanted a Platinum remake with a DP coat of paint. But that's okay, right? I mean, sure, these are faithful remakes, but we saw Porygon Z in the trailer. You can't get Porygon in the main campaign of Diamond and Pearl, but you can get them in the main campaign of Platinum. Clearly, Platinum content would be in BDSP, right? No, they weren't. Looker and Charon? Never heard of them. The pacing being fixed with Fantina as a third gym leader? Actually, there's a large gap between your second and third gym badges. Cyrus speech? And extra Cyrus scenes? You goofy goober. You only talked to Cyrus like 4 times. All of Platinum's additions that fixed? Yes, I do mean fixed. Diamond and Pearl are completely gone, leaving you with an unfinished story where character building is post-game. Now, the Sinnoh story can work without Looker and Sharon. It'll feel a lot smaller, but it can still work. However, without those extra Cyrus scenes, he becomes a flat villain. You just kinda forget he exists for large portions of the game, and his battle on Mount Coronet is just a complete joke. And don't even get me started on the Pokedex. Platinum had a Pokedex of 210, which, yeah, small by today's standards, but still gives you some nice options for team building. Diamond and Pearl, on the other hand, only has a dex of 151, all because Game Freak has a fetish with that number. This is why you have the joke about Sinnoh not having any fire types. Diamond and Pearl infamously only had 2 options for fire type families, and when faced with the choice between DP's terrible 151 dex and Platinum's pretty good 210 dex, guess which rEmAKe chose? The faithful rEmAKe has the infamous DP dex. But wait, I hear you say. BDSP may not have the Platinum dex, but Platinum Pokemon can be found in the Grand Underground. This place allows you to catch some of those great Platinum mons. You even have an easy way to catch Munchlax here. That's great and all, but this is still a weird compromise. If you're gonna allow us to catch Platinum Pokemon anyways, then why not just have them in their Platinum locations? Why still have the terrible 151 dex? And while you can catch Platinum Pokemon in the Underground, the game isn't built around them. Something that we'll find is consistent with BDSP. Gligar is the perfect example of this. Sure, you can catch Gligar before the post-game, but the Razor Fang is still in its DP post-game location, so you can't actually evolve your Gligar until after the league. And because this is a faithful rEmAKe, you can't just get the Eevee to somewhat circumvent this. But ironically, the Ground Underground could have solved this problem. In the Ground Underground, you can dig for items such as shards. So why not make evolution items found that way too? Sure, some items wouldn't make sense underground, but neither do weird boxes holding statues. Actually, thinking about it, how cool would it be if there were boxes that could have items in them? It would make just as much sense as the statues. But also, speaking of those statues, it does kinda suck that secret bases are gone now. I never got to experience the original minigames, and it would have been cool if they were reintroduced. But whatever, catching Pokemon is all you really need. I mean, who needs the Platinum mons on the surface? You still got good team building options. They must make the game easy since the game isn't built for them, right? Well, yes and no. BDSP has the weirdest difficulty curves in Pokemon. The first few gyms are pretty much the same as the originals, but as you progress, the gyms start having more competitive builds. EVs, IVs, items, they got it all. Now, even with this, you may not have all that much trouble. For one, you have the Switch EXP share, meaning every Pokemon gets experience from any knockout. In the originals, you could battle every trainer and not be overleveled. Meanwhile, in BDSP, if you battle every trainer, you're gonna be overleveled. And even if you do avoid being overleveled, the game could still be easy because of another Switch era feature, Affection Boosts. Doing things that passively raise your friendship, such as beating gym leaders and literally walking, will now also raise affection, meaning boosted experience, potentially adding to that overleveling issue, boosted crit chance, and a chance to survive hits that would otherwise knock you out. So because of all these, the game can be largely easy. That is until you get to the Pokemon League. I will say, in my experiences, even though I end up overleveled for the gyms, I'm never overleveled for the Elite Four. However, if you know the BDSP League, then you know that a lot of people would actually like to be overleveled here. BDSP has one of the most notorious leagues in the series. The Pokemon themselves are the same as the originals, however, the BDSP League has nearly competitively viable Pokemon, great moves, near perfect IVs, near maxed out EVs, helpful held items, beneficial natures, and some Pokemon even have their hidden abilities. It's like Ilka heard how scared people were of the original Sinnoh League and said, okay, but look at what I can do. Sets that a normal player wouldn't achieve until the post game. And then there's Cynthia. BDSP Cynthia makes Platinum Cynthia look like a rival battle. While the Elite Four has close to competitively viable Pokemon, Cynthia's team is full on a competitively ready build. All of them have really good movesets that cover their weaknesses, perfect 31 IVs in every stat they use, fully use all 510 EVs a Pokemon can have, and items that make them even more of a threat. Now, I will say, I haven't had as much trouble with this league as other people had. However, even in my first go at the league, I didn't go in blind. I knew what the league had in store and what to expect. I also had my own strong team that could counter the league, but I still think a league this strong is a problem. If these were rematch teams or part of a difficulty setting, then I think they would be fine. However, there's a lot of kids who just like using their favorite Pokemon, and people whose first Pokemon game was BDSP. They wouldn't have the foresight I have with my experience. So honestly, I have mixed feelings about this, especially since it goes from real easy with collecting gym badges to testing your battle knowledge in the league. So ultimately, I would have preferred it if they toned it down. the original Sinnoh League still had good movesets, but only 30 IVs in every stat, no EVs, only the A's had a held item, random natures, and of course hidden abilities didn't exist yet. Personally, I would have done something like this in BDSP, for pretty much all the boss battles in the main campaign. If I were to change any of these first match teams, I would remove their EVs, and only the Aces would have held items just like in Platinum.
Whoa, hey Daniel. You seem to be making a lot of Platinum comparisons here. You know it's a Diamond and Pearl remake, right? Not a Platinum remake?
You know hearing that makes me irrationally mad, right?
Yup.
You're sleeping on the couch tonight. If you've ever unironically used this argument in favor of BDSP, just know that I will forever think of you as an inbred cuck. An even bigger one than I am for liking these games.
Oh my god!
How about we take a look at past Pokemon remakes and see how faithful past remakes were to the originals, Fire Red and Leaf Green. Okay, these games don't have too much yellow content, if any. But then again, yellow isn't exactly an enhanced version. Sure, it fixed some of Red and Blue's mistakes, like giving Charizard and Scyther stab flying moves, but aside from that, yellow is just, as the title says, the special Pikachu edition. But hey, let's look at Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Hey, wait a minute. Who's this Yucine guy? Why is there an emphasis on Suicune? And why is the Battle Frontier here? None of these were in the original Gold and Silver. Why would a remake not be faithful to the originals? It's almost like, as the Game Freak developers literally say in this game, there's no point in remaking a game if you don't try something different. And if you've already made an enhanced version, then it only makes sense to include the changes in the remake. The Zelda game we all compare BDSP to understood this, so I don't know why BDSP thought it was too good for this. And now we have Oras. Sure, Oras is more faithful to the originals than Heart Gold and Soul Silver, but it still bothered to acknowledge Emerald with a Delta episode, and we can get into the remake versus remaster debate if you wanted. Because BDSP tried really hard to be faithful, you can make the argument that these are more remasters than remakes. BDSP clearly isn't faithful since there are modern mechanics, such as the fairy type, new moves, and a modern EXP share. So remake, right? But the entire story, the battles you have, and the layout of the map is one-to-one with the originals. So remaster? And even outside all of this, let's see how this ties back to Platinum. Let's pretend that Platinum never existed, just like BDSP did. Diamond and Pearl are still a broken mess that people would dunk on, with enough problems to fill an hour-long video. Sure, it has its fans, but if Diamond and Pearl were our only window to Sinnoh back in Gen 4, then Sinnoh would not have been remembered as fondly as it is now. Now, let's remember that Platinum exists again. An amazing feeling, I know. Imagine a version of BDSP that took a page from Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Heart Gold and Soul Silver are really just Crystal remakes, but with a gold and silver coat of paint over them. In the same way, BDSP should have been a Platinum remake, but with a Diamond and Pearl coat of paint over them. The main story, interactions with Cyrus, order of gym leaders, and yes, the Pokédex should have been based on Platinum. Heck, the Pokédex could have also done what non-Kanto remakes did, which was also have layer gen evolutions and even some newer Pokemon. And in our hypothetical version of BDSP that's really a Platinum remake, the only point where you remember these are DP remakes is Spear Pillar, where instead of Giratina you get Dialga or Palkia. A downgrade from the Distortion world, but it would be the only downgrade. Okay, my rant's done. Now, aren't I supposed to talk about why I like these games too? Well, it's convenient. I mean, it's on the Switch. And one thing BDSP definitely has over Platinum is that it's faster. Okay, I have actually good stuff to say about BDSP. Admittedly, I really like the art style. I knew this was a bit of a hot topic when it was first revealed, but honestly, when it comes to main series Pokemon Switch games, this is probably my second favorite art style after Let's Go. And while I am disappointed with how these games came out, it was still nice to revisit Sinnoh and all my favorite characters. I even did a Nuzlocke in this game that I had fun with. with. You'll see the events of that Nuzlocke later this year, by the way. There are some other nice things I could say about BDSP, but they honestly don't really make up for all the shortcomings. So where does that leave us? BDSP was my biggest disappointment in Pokémon, and that's saying a lot considering their recent track record. But unlike Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet, which I did not care for when they were announced, and continue to feel indifferent about after playing, BDSP was something I was really excited for. Gen 4 was my introduction to the series. Explorers of Sky was my first ever Pokémon game. Platinum was my first main series Pokémon game, and I even grew up watching the Diamond and Pearl anime. Dawn was even my first ever anime crush. So hearing that a return to Sinnoh was announced made me absolutely excited for the potential they had. But here we are 2 years later, and no one talks about these games except to dunk on them. The same fate as the games BDSP sought to faithfully recreate, and that's upsetting. I said in my LA retrospective that I was falling out of love with the games. So where am I half a year later? Unfortunately, I feel the same. In 2022, I played through Sinnoh 4 times, twice in BDSP, once in Legends Arceus, and lastly in Platinum. And guess which playthrough was the most fun? It showed me that there was just something missing in the newer games. 3 years to develop a game worked with 2D sprites, but clearly Game Freak either needs to give the 3D games more time, or make them smaller scale. Ironically, BDSP could have been a good example of this, but because of numerous poor decisions, we got Inbred Diamond and Silly Pearl. So when we inevitably get Gen 10 in 2 years, it might just be my last new main series Pokemon game. I'm not even asking for Pokemon to be at the level of other Nintendo titles. I just don't want to be bored like I was playing Scarlet and Violet. At the very least, I can safely say that the spin-offs are still great. Rescue Team DX is the best Pokemon game on the Switch. Sorry, not hearing any counter arguments right now. And hey, look at that, a Detective Pikachu sequel on the Switch. In fact, let's take a good look at the Nintendo Direct we got in June. Personally, I almost forgot that the Scarlet and Violet DLC was announced. I mean, Detective Pikachu, come on. And if I want my Monster Trainer fix, we got a new Dragon Quest Monsters game, which may just become my favorite main series Pokemon Switch game. And let's not forget the Super Mario RPG remake. Ironically, even if the Mario RPG remake is 1-to-1 with the original, it'll be way better than BDSP, since it'll be based on a game that actually still holds up to this day. And hey, I know I spent the entire video dunking on BDSP, but as a reminder, this was all just my personal opinion. I would honestly be happy to hear from anyone who genuinely likes BDSP. Different opinions will make us all individuals after all. Have a nice day, you wonderful people.